Hello everyone. Today's video, we're going to get started with VATSIM in a kind of simple sort of fashion. We're going to be taking an IFR flight from an airport that is controlled by a ground controller and basically do all the rest of it on our own. One of the reasons this is a great scenario to be in is you only have to talk to one person the whole flight, but you still get the full experience of being on VATSIM. Now, I will say that this is being done completely live, so we run the risk that, unfortunately or fortunately, depending on what happens to us, we might run into another controller on our way over, which will make things a little more authentic. So let's go ahead and get started. So first things first, I basically built a really straightforward little flight plan, and I've already pre-filed everything. Let me go ahead and switch modes here real quick so you guys can see it. I'm going to grab my little vPly content. I've got this all set up. I'm going to go to connect. Actually, before I do that, do flight plan. I'm actually going to go ahead and say fetch from server. And unfortunately, it could not pick up any server from here because we're not actually on the network at this time. Until we actually file into the network, we can't grab our flight plan off of it. Now, the flight plan I created, I'll show you in a minute, is a little IFR flight that's going to take us down to PVD. So what I like to do before you get on the VATSIM network and press that massive connect button is pick somewhere on the ground to start that is disconnected from everything else that you have. Like in this case, we're sitting here at Bradley International Airport where we know there's a ground controller. Of course, you're saying, how do we know there's a ground controller? Let me show you. Ta-da! You can see right here on the VATSIM SimAware. This is a great website, by the way. It says so with this little G, meaning we have a ground controller and we also have an ATIS. So we're going to have to make notes of these things. And once we join the server, you'll actually see us here on the ground. It's actually pretty cool. So this is all set. My airplane's all set. For your own sanity, try to keep things logical here. Don't do anything nutty. One thing you'll notice is I did not add the rest of the flight plan in here. I have no idea what they're actually going to give us as far as a clearance. Another thing I want to say, too, is I actually asked for this clearance a half an hour ago. I did not ask for it. I put my flight plan in because it is IFR over an hour ago, actually half an hour ago, so that they would have enough time inside the network to actually identify me and be able to provide me with the requisite clearance. My fingers are crossed that when we call the actual ground controllers themselves, they'll be able to give us a full flight plan and give it to us as we asked for it versus what we could potentially end up with. All right, so here comes the scary part. I love this part. So once we're in the simulator, we just come over here. I press the connect button. It's going to ask us, this is all accurate. This is not. We are actually a PA-28 this time. This is Piper Cherokee. You have entered an unknown. This will prevent other pilots. Would you like to try it? So we'll say no. We'll come in here and see what happens if we type in PA. Or we'll try typing in Piper and see if it identifies us real quickly here. You want to make sure you get this right. Hey, there we go. So we're a Piper Warrior, technically. Well, that's nice. You can just type it in. Piper Warrior 2. Ta-da! Oh, are you serious? That's literally what I just typed, except for the A. I guess that's what I forgot. So I'm going to come in here. I'm going to press the connect button. So once you bop the connect button, lots of magic is going to happen. Oh, by the way, when you set your weather before you join, you want to absolutely make sure you set it to clear skies. Otherwise, when it loads in the actual weather that it's going to need, it's not going to load properly. Right now, everything's looking pretty cool, calm, collected. It looks like a really, really nice sky and everything like that. But that will probably change once things kind of get moving a little bit later on. So now that that's all taken care of, I'll go ahead and swing back over to these side of things. Well, let's go ahead and take a look at what we have for time. My clearance is not valid for until 7 minutes from now, which is about 1:15. Of course, I'll go ahead and skip time there. But one thing we can do while we're waiting is that we can come back over to our little handy vPilot here, and we can see that there is a KBDL ATIS frequency of 118.15. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and dial that in. But before I do that real quick, I'll do everybody a quick favor for your ears, is I'll turn down the audio of the actual simulator so it's like critically low. I've actually disabled my compression here to make it a little bit simpler for you. Apply and save, go back, resume. All right, let's get this thing all kind of fired up, and we'll kind of go from there, sort of a thing. Go press that one. Of course, we have our normal options, which are going to be over here. One thing that you could do here is you can flip on your battery and flip on your alternator. This aircraft doesn't like to run off the battery for long periods of time because, again, we don't have a ground power unit on this one. If we did, I'd feel slightly different about just kind of chilling here with everything out. Obviously, you can see I've used up a little bit of everything on here before. So we're just going to get this thing rolling pretty much the standard method here. Let's see here, time of day. Why is the clock not in the upper left corner like it always is in the real one? Okay, so we know that it's going to be pointing towards the right side, which looks pretty good. I'm going to go ahead and put the mixture to rich here. We're going to flip on the anti-collision light. I don't know why everything else is turned on. Probably because I was busy doing something a little bit earlier on. Go ahead and crack the throttle like we always do. We'll go ahead and unlock the primer. It's only going to need 2 pops today, I think. I don't think it's going to need any more than that. Lock that sucker. Looks good, looks good, looks good. We'll flip on our navigation lights real quick. It doesn't have a switch for it like it does in the real one. That's okay. Nice. Now, remember, when you're connected to their server, you're at their mercy. So make sure your parking brake is set and you're not moving a millimeter until you've got all your proper communications and everything set up. I'm going to go flip over to the GTN 750. Like I said, I'm not sure. I'm also going to switch to the HSI. The HSI is going to make our lives much simpler when we're getting any sort of instructions in the event that we do get kind of sniped in the air sort of thing. Everything else looks great, though. I'm pretty happy with that. I'm going to go ahead and shut that sucker off by clicking this button over here. Let's go ahead and get our avionics. It's got a neat little switch. You just click it, close it, and you're good to go. Now, let's see here. My clock says we got 5 minutes before our clearance is even valid. So I'm going to go ahead and check with that ATIS and get something. Please, new version update. Ah, I just updated it, too. So we're going to come up to our comm panel. We're going to press right here. I'm going to do 11815. Go ahead and get out a pencil or pen. I'm going to go ahead and get myself a notepad real quickly here so I can just make some notes. You're going to be quizzed on this information when you do call the ground people. So you want to make sure you have something to write it down with. So I'm going to go ahead and press the transfer button, and let's take a listen.
Expect ILS approach. North is to airmen.
There we go.
Read back, I'll hold short instructions and assigned altitudes. Advise on initial contact. You have information alpha.
All right. Hopefully they read it back.
Bradley International Airport 8 is information alpha. 16510. 1010 at 7. Visibility 10. Ceiling 1,300 overcast. Temperature 22. 2.17. Altimeter 3009er. Runways 6 and 33 in use. Expect ILS approach. North is to airmen. Read back, I'll hold short instructions and assigned altitudes. Advise on initial contact. You have information alpha.
All right, so we just got a bunch of information there. You can go ahead and talk to that all you want, as it's not going to matter too much, so I wouldn't go panicking about it at all. It seems like we have, what did I do over here? Did I push the wrong button on that one? Nah, I'm not going to stress about it. So basically what we have is, as you probably heard from the information, is obviously conditions are really, really nasty. Right now, with my beautiful, not so live weather, it doesn't look so bad. If I swing this over to live, it should go ahead and get a little nasty. But again, Flight Sim's been having so much trouble with that lately. Oh, there we go. Much better. So now we can go ahead and pop that button and make sure everything's all set with that stuff. Good. Okay, so this is not even accurate either. Well, we'll give it a few minutes to get caught up. Okay, so now it's time to go ahead and now we've got the ATIS information. We're ready to go ahead and call ground to ask them nicely for our clearance. The clearance can get a little lengthy. And when we call them, basically we're going to say who we are, where we are, and what we want. And then we can kind of go from there, sort of a thing like that. Like I said, we still have about 2 minutes before, like I said, a clearance is even valid. So go ahead and skip time to that point. Of course, while we're waiting, we might as well recover that flight plan. There we go. We're going to have to dial all this stuff in manually. I see they've already come in here and added this in. This wasn't in here originally. This is something they put in. That's a departure procedure, so we're going to have to go look that up as well, which is going to make things a little bit more interesting for us. But again, it's not bad. They're basically going to offer us vectors, and we're just going to kind of take off and go from there. So now that we know what our route's going to be, I'll take a couple moments to go ahead and throw that in real fast before, we even make the call here. So let's go down to our procedures. Actually, we got to get everything preset here. We'll go ahead and dial in our flight plan. Set origin. Ooh, we'll go backwards just a little bit. Go in here. KBDL. Press enter. Our destination is going to be Kilo Papa Victor Delta. I'm going to press enter. And now we can go ahead and throw in our little waypoints. So go ahead and insert Let's load a procedure here. And we'll do departure procedure. Like I said, we're in the Bradley 5. And, of course, it's going to give us options. We're going to assume it's runway 6. We have to actually hear what they're going to give us. The Bradley 5 simply says they're going to tell us to go in a direction, do a thing, and then come back. Usually it's just vectors, so I'm not going to stress about that too much. After I've done that, I'm going to click back here. I'm going to go ahead and insert before. So our next waypoint is going to be HFD. We want, of course, Northeast United States. This is, again, considered an en route kind of portion of things. I click in here, insert after. We're going to go ahead and say, I believe our next point, let's go ahead and grab the flight plan again so that you can see it, is going to be Victor 3. So we can do Victor 3. That's going to give us a big nasty thing. It's going to give us all these different points. That's because we can't enter Victor 3. What we have to do instead is we have to actually dial it in by its actual next position. So in this particular one, if you take a look, our next position is going to be Jewett. Jewit. I'm going to go ahead and press the enter key. That's looking pretty good there. And again, this can be modified when we actually make the call. And then when we actually get there, we need one more thing before. We'll do, backspace, PVD, enter. Of course, we know the weather in PVD is pretty nasty, so we're going to have to see what this actually shakes up to be once we get a little bit closer. So our departure is all pre-selected. We can select this departure. We're perfectly happy with it. Again, it's just going to give us a vector, and off we go at a certain altitude. Then it'll say resume on navigation. Don't stress about this one. We will call it up once we get to that point. So go cancel, go back. We'll go up to my map page. And then you get a beautiful look of everything. Of course, you're picking up everything under the sun here as far as all the nasty weather. We'll be flying through that quite a bit later. And unfortunately, we can't zoom in all the way here, which is kind of a bummer if you ask me. Go open up the flight plan over there, so it's on that side. Okay, so the time is now 1:15 or 13:15, which is early enough to go ahead and make the call. So what we're going to do now is we're going to go ahead and call up Bradley Ground. Now, normally you call it Bradley Departure or Bradley Approach, but like I said, we're kind of stuck with this one, so we're going to stick to this one for now. So I'm going to go ahead and press that button. So what is going to be the magic frequency here? Well, luckily for us, let's go ahead and close this page. Bradley Ground is 121.9er, which we can just come right in here. 121.900. Go ahead and switch. And now we're ready to get our clearance. So the way we're going to do this is I got a little button for the radio. I'm just going to press it and say Bradley clearance, a Piper 90725 Quebec is at the general aviation ramp, ready to copy IFR to Providence. And that's basically all you need to say. So hopefully I don't bumble this too much, but we'll see exactly what it is. Grab your notepad, by the way, because it's going to get a little crazy. Okay, so let's make sure everything's ready. Again, don't touch the button until you're ready to touch the button. I'll go ahead and open this so as you can see this pretty well. Here we go. Bradley Ground, Piper 90725 Quebec is at the General Aviation West Ramp, ready to copy IFR to Providence.
Piper 9725 Quebec, Bradley Ground, your way to the Providence Airport with the Bradley 5 departure, radio vector Hartford, San Cloud, maintain 4000, flight 5000, one German test for departure, departure is offline, select 7301.
So now what we're going to do is we're going to simply read it back to them. Piper 90725 Quebec is clear to Providence by the Bradley 5 departure. Maintain 4000, expect 5000, squawk 7301.
Piper 25 Quebec, your exact script, radio taxi, expect 196.
We will let you know when it's ready to taxi 90725 Quebec. Okay, so that's it. They've given us our clearance. Again, the only big thing that they warned us there is the fact that we're supposed to initially take 4,000 feet, and they give us 5,000, but as you probably remember from before, let me go ahead and grab this thing down there. Oh, by the way, there we are. As you probably noticed before, there are, oh no, look at this. Boston has a controller. Well, things just got more exciting for us, so this will be kind of fun once we get up there. But again, we have to act as if we know everything that we're ready to do up until that point. So next what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and taxi over the runway. But before I even do that, I'm going to make sure my transponder is set up correctly. So they gave us a transponder 7301. So I'm going to say 7301. I'm going to go ahead and press the enter key. Make sure altitude reporting is turned on with the alt. And so now we are good to go as far as that particular item. Now that they have that, they'll be able to identify us once we get up in the air. So now all we have to do is ask for permission to taxi. Before you do any of that, though, I got to warn you, make sure you know exactly where you are and make sure you write down any of the instructions you're going to have. So let's go ahead and grab this sucker over here, and we're going to go ahead and call for the taxi. So we're going to say, Bradley Ground, Piper 90725 Quebec is at the General Aviation Ramp. Request taxi to the active IFR to Providence. That's all we got to say. Let's try it out. Bradley Ground, Piper 90725 Quebec is at the General Aviation Ramp. Request taxi to the active East Departure to Providence IFR.
Piper 25 Quebec, runway 6, taxi via Alpha, Juliet Romeo.
Say again for 25 Quebec.
Piper 25 Quebec, taxi runway 6 via Alpha, Juliet Romeo.
Taxi to runway 6 via Alpha, Juliet Romeo, Piper 90725 Quebec. So the reason I asked them is I could have sworn they said Sierra for a second there. So that means what we're going to do is we're going to come out of here. We're going to take our first right. We're going to go ahead and take our left turn, and we're going to hold short of runway 6 right here. Now that makes things pretty easy until, of course, you get over to the simulator and you're like, where on earth is everything? So this is going to be our first turn. We're going to take a right. We're going to go straight down there. And we're going to hold short right down on that side. So now that we've been given clearance to go, it's just a matter of releasing the parking brake and off we go. Of course, like I tell you, don't tarry. You've got work to do here. Now that I'm in the instrument system, they're expecting me to do things, so we got to get going here. All right, I'm lit up like a Christmas tree, and we're off to our first position. Good time, by the way, to make sure all your instruments are working properly. And what will happen here, which will make things a little exciting for us, is because that we are in a situation where there's only a ground controller, he's going to give us clearance to take off. Not clearance to take off. He'll basically say, fly whatever it takes to get to wherever you need to go, and then we'll be kind of on our way. It's actually kind of neat. You'll see what I mean. Apparently, somebody forgot to mow this pavement. All right, here's our first turn. Go back to our little diagram real quick here. So we're going to go ahead and take a right here. This is going to come on to Juliet. Normally got a big sign here, but we don't see that. I'm not worried about it too much. And we're just going to make our way right down to the end here where Romeo basically is going to intercept with everything. Now it's a good time to go ahead and double check your notes as far as what we're going to be doing for that approach. So as we're kind of wheeling around here, let's go ahead and grab AirNav. It's a great website for these things. We have the arrivals and we have the Bradley 5. So go ahead and grab that. So the Bradley at 5 here is a relatively straightforward departure procedure. Basically, it says, after taking off on runway 6, climb heading 75 degrees or assigned, then the second half will be to expect radar vectors to our filed or assigned fix. So in this case, the most important thing we need to know is we're going up to 75 degrees, and we're going to go ahead and go up to 4,000 feet. So let's go ahead and get these things kind of pre-programmed mentally so that once we take off, we don't have to stress too much about things. Go ahead and pop over here. That'll be 75 degrees, right? Whoa. And that's what happens.
After 25 Quebec, landing VATSIM 1,
Say again for 25 Quebec. It was really difficult to hear you.
Pepper 25 Quebec, departure is offline, monitor UNICOM 122.8.
We'll monitor 122.8 after takeoff, 25 Quebec. So basically what he's telling us is there are no tower controllers, which basically he just said, okay, go. So once we get airborne, of course, we're going to have to do all of our own calls and everything along those lines. So again, don't panic too much. We're going to go ahead and get off the runway here for just half a second before entering. Like I said, if we had a tower controller, he would have handed us off to them before we took off. Now I'm going to do something tremendously naughty here. I'm going to run up the airplane. Obviously, don't run it up in the actual place itself here, but that's fine. We're just going to run some quick checks to make sure everything looks okay on the airplane. So we're going to rev it up a few hundred RPM. That looks pretty good right there. We'll go ahead and check our magnetos. They both look pretty good. We're going to go ahead and check our carburetor heat. Apparently that doesn't work yet. They'll fix that later, I'm sure. I'm going to go ahead and pull that throttle all the way back. And I'm going to pop it right to that position. Delightful. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to the Unicom frequency, which is universally 122.8. And now I'm ready for takeoff. So let's go ahead and finish up our last couple stages here. We're going to set this to 75. Remember, 4,000 feet before you turn. So we're going to go ahead and release the parking brake. Give ourselves a little tiny bit of gas here. You don't need to do anything excessive. CDI, we're going to switch to GPS mode. We're going to go ahead and flip on our landing.
And Bradley traffic, 8 mile on runway 6, Bradley.
Bradley traffic, Cessna 90725 Quebec is taking off runway 6, northeast departure. So what just happened is when we got on the thing, we discovered somebody else is coming in for a landing. So we got to get out of their way. Rotate. And we're off. Okay. So now we got to follow instructions. So we can't leave this runway heading until we get to the end of the runway. So what we're going to actually be doing here is basically ripping down here, and as soon as we get to that first point, which I said, we're going to flip over to 75 degrees, and then normally, like I said, we get called by the tower, which would notify us basically what we have to do. If you actually take a look at my little diagram down there, you'll see the fact that it's actually done a nice job of kind of setting us up for that first waypoint, just to make our lives a little bit more sane here. Of course, in the real world, little airplanes like this usually don't fly out of international airports, but hey, we need to work with what we got. Let's double check to make sure the fuel pump's working okay here. I don't like the idea of that not being working. Yeah, there we go. Good. All right, we're just about clear of the runway. Go swing this way just a little bit. And we're looking beautiful. What a nice day to fly. What a nice day indeed. All right, now we're going to make our heading 75 degrees. And now what we would do normally is we would wait for them to call us to say, proceed direct Hartford or something along those lines. But they're actually not able to do that at this time because there is no tower controller. Our next person we're going to be talking to is going to be the center controller, but that's not until we get a little bit further along here. So what I'm going to do instead is I'm just going to call the Unicom 12218 and just sort of say what's going on here. So for this case, Bradley traffic, Piper 90725 Quebec is departing to the east off the northern part of the runway. So we're just letting everybody know kind of what we're doing and where we are so people know exactly what's going on. Come swing away this way. And now we can now proceed on course. Again, in the real world, you're going to be getting specific instructions. We're not getting anything like that because, like I said, we're outside of the towered control. What's going to happen to us in a minute, though, is we're actually going to be entering into a new controlled airspace environment where we're going to be responsible for talking to those people as we go. And that's why it's so important that we get that little code right in here so they're able to identify us once we get to that particular part. All right, get ready for practicing your partial panel practice. Always a good idea to turn on carburetor heat whenever you're in an environment like this, just in case you suck in some naughty moisture into the engine, which makes your engine not like you any longer. All right, let's go flip on the automatic pilot. We're going to go to nav mode. Remember, there is no up-down autopilot on this aircraft. The up-down autopilot is us. So unfortunately, we're going to have to enjoy that. Okay, so now we're on our way. I'll go ahead and zoom out just a teeny tiny bit so you can see what's going on here. And you can see we're going to be leaving Bradley's approach. And like he said, we're supposed to do 4,000, expecting 5,000. So once we get to 4,000, we'll just pretend that we haven't quite hit that next key component, which should be like we saw in that diagram earlier, basically hitting Hartford. But again, it totally depends on the day, depends on which controller you're talking to. You just have to kind of go with it sometimes. And again, don't worry about being perfect. Nobody's perfect. You're going to hear people making mistakes all the time. And it seems intimidating, like, oh no, what have I done? It's really never as bad as people make it out to be, so don't worry about it. All right, we're going to go swing around here. Again, the autopilot does not replace the pilot, it simply simplifies the work of the pilot. So in this case, it's simplifying the work as I start to plan exactly what I need to be doing here. PTK is 179er, that's fine, I'll go set it to 179er. Again, that's desired track. Perfect. 1, 2, 3, delightful. Now we are basically on track, and our next waypoint is just a few minutes away. There's 4,000 feet. Remember, we are the elevator autopilot, the altitude autopilot, so we are responsible for this on our own. I always like to go a little bit above the altitude and then dive down onto it in order to build up a little bit of speed before I go ahead and throttle back. I really wish Flight Simulator would stop messing with the trim. It was fine as it was. Why'd you have to speed it up? All right, I think it's probably for the Xbox crowd, I'm sure. There we go. That's about 4,000 feet, and we are proceeding on course. So normally what would happen is we'd find out, oh, God, they told us to expect 5,000 feet. Usually what would happen is right as we're going to hit the 4,000 feet point, they'd call us back and say, climb and maintain 5,000 feet. So for us, I'm not going to stress about that too much. I'm just going to continue with the flight. By the way, this is actual real-world conditions. And, it's not always great weather this time of year. All right, so let's get ready for our next phase of flight here, which is going to be talking to Boston. So now Boston, of course, knows we're coming. They've got the flight plan followed. Everything's ready to go. How do I know I'm going to have to talk to these guys? Let me show you. Go ahead and close this one out. So we don't need this one anymore. We'll probably need that one a little later, but I'm not going to worry about it just yet. What do you mean I need something in the notepad? Let me go flip over things real quickly, make life a little bit simpler here. Let's close that one out. Let's open this one up. Let's go here, double check your altitude. Perfect. All right, that's the one I was looking for. Let's go ahead and pop this sucker on real fast so y'all can see it again. So you can see this is us. We're on our way. Keep in mind this is a little out of date, but you can see our little 75-degree turn there, and then we went straight, and now we're proceeding down to Hartford just like we expected it to be. Nice. Now the cool thing here is you can come in here and it'll give you like all details. It'll give you the appropriate thing. It'll give you your altitudes. It's all sort of cool how all this information is stored on you. Kind of creepy. By the way, don't forget to double check what your current altitude is, which for whatever reason still seems to be perfect, so I'm not going to mess with it. Okay, now we need to see if there's anybody else we have to talk to. Uh-oh, Boston Approach. Now, Boston Approach, now the way this works is, again, you own everything underneath you. So this guy up here in Boston actually controls all of this airspace in here, including any towered airports that's also located underneath. So in our particular situation here, we're actually, as we're kind of cruising in here, we have to remember that we have to talk to him because we're technically under his control as we make our way to Providence. So that'll get interesting once we get there. But I will fast forward to that point because it's going to take a few minutes to actually get to his edge. So now we've been cruising along pretty well. We just crossed our other waypoint. That's the Harvard VOR. And we're basically proceeding our way towards Providence. Looks like it's getting a little nastier outside. Basically,
Go here, 1 Tim, right heading 355 to the localizer.
So we're getting a little bit
Turning
of
right, heading 355 to the localizer, I'll see you.
Yeah, this is always
Boston departure, hello, JetBlue 584, 2100.
JetBlue 0584, Boston departure, radar contact, climb maintain 14000.
Climb maintain 14000, JetBlue 584.
So what you're listening to right now is Boston Approach. So as you recall, when we took a look at our map earlier, I'm just trying to get this thing back under control. Obviously, as the winds...
Alpha Golf Sierra 1, 3 miles from nabbed, maintain 3000 to established on the localizer, cleared ILS from a 4 right approach.
Oh, yeah.
Cleared for the ILS runway 4 right approach and maintain 3,000 feet until established.
Nice. Okay, so we'll probably have to put them on pause for half a second here to kind of explain what to do. So I'm just going to... Whoop! Ah, look at that. Now they're quiet. All right, so at this particular point, we're making our way. We got about 14 minutes before we're going to be hitting Providence here. And like I said, I'm kind of doing some IFR battling here, trying to get the trim to behave. Remember, we don't have an up and down autopilot on this one. So taking a quick peek at our little diagram here, you can see this is us. We're about to cross into this zone. This is a 50-mile radius. So what we need to do is we need to cross into Providence. We need to cross into their area, get permission to do everything we're going to do, and basically do all that all at once as we cross in, because we're only going to have about 10, 15 miles. So the way I'm basically looking at this is you can see my total distance to go is about 23 nautical miles at this particular juncture. So taking a look back here, 23 nautical miles. If you want to split the difference, when we're about, say, 15 nautical miles out, we'll go ahead and give a Boston Approach a call. Now, one thing I do recommend doing is we're kind of cruising around here, obviously playing the battle with trying to keep your altitude. Welcome to flying in clouds, by the way. It's not nearly as pleasant as you think. So what I've done is on my COM2 is I've actually dialed in the CTAF frequency, which is 122.8, and I'm actually monitoring that right now in order to make my life a little bit safer so I can hear what people are doing kind of around me. Obviously, there's not many people nearby, so I don't have to panic about that too much. On the flip side, I got my Boston Approach, like I said. Once we hit about 15 nautical miles to go, we're going to have to give them a call. Our call is super duper simple. Basically, all we're going to do is give them a ring and say, you know, Piper 90725 Quebec is at 4,000. That's it. That's all we're going to have to say to them because they already know where we need to be when, and they will give us all the appropriate instructions so once we do get a little bit closer to them. Man, this is quite a project without an automatic pilot, but we're making do with it. So what I'm going to do is fast forward. When this magic number says 15, we'll give them a call and see what happens. By the way, if you're wondering where I got the frequency from, I got it right off of here, 13300. You can actually look this up on AirNav or anything along that. And I've actually noticed that Boston now has a tower. So if we wanted to be ultra brave, we could actually go up to Logan and land the plane using tower control. But for now, I'm only going to be worried about the approach people. Like I said, once we get to about 15 miles. All right, we're starting to get pretty darn close now. So I make sure I'm in the correct frequency. We also popped up the $5,000 so that we agreed with our current flight plan. Again, if you don't have somebody to tell you, you're kind of on your own as far as that goes. So you got to make sure that you do that. So what I'll do is I'll basically give them a quick call, say who we are, and they already know that we're coming. We already have a squawk code. They've got a nice little radar image of everything. They're probably going to give us a wall of instructions, so I kind of got to be ready for that when it does come. So let's go ahead and get our handy-dandy notepad out. I'll go ahead and pop that open, switch back modes real quickly so you can kind of see everything. Looks pretty good. We're ready to rock. I'll pull that one out of the way. Make sure I get back to the correct altitude. And let's give them a call. Boston Approach, Piper 90725 Quebec is at 5,000.
Sorry, lost calling. Say your call sign and position.
Boston Approach, Piper 90725 Quebec is 14 miles west of Providence, IFR to PPD at 5,000.
November 90725 Quebec, Boston Approach. What's your destination?
Kilo Papa Victor Delta.
Yeah, I only cover Boston and underlying deltas, so you'll have to go back to the advisory frequency.
Will go, thank you. All right, so in that particular case, he's basically saying that he doesn't want us, he doesn't want to talk to us, which happens. But basically what we're going to do now is we're going to take over. I'm going to go ahead and flip back to the advisory frequency, and now we got to land the plane. Oh no! So what we're going to do now is we're going to quickly go back to our main menu here. We'll go to our flight plan, go all the way down here to a PBD. We'll go ahead and select that. We'll go ahead and load our procedure up. So our approach procedure in this case, because the winds in Providence are coming mostly out of, you want to call it kind of the northwest-ish. We're most likely going to be taking runway 5. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to quickly confirm the ATIS of Providence just to kind of avoid that. Just checking to make sure nothing else came in there. So what I'm going to do real quickly is I'll go ahead and get ourselves a little bit of information. This is one of the things I love about this program is the fact that you can bust into here and like get all these useful informations directly out of everything. So if we go to here, airport, PVT, if I ever go down to frequencies, take a look at this. ATIS, AWAS, everything. Whoop. Now we can just swap it and take a listen. Five. All right, so what we just found out there is pretty important stuff. Basically, we know that but I'm on the right frequency. So what we know is we know at that particular airport that they're using ILS runway 5. So I'm going to go ahead and add procedures. Go ahead and press approach. Welcome to Flight Sim, everybody. All right, approach. We're going to pick, no, not localizer. No. We're going to do ILS for 5. QT's fine. We're going to load, approach, and activate. And now we're going to go ahead and scroll back here. Go back to the map, and we'll see exactly. Going over QT is not exactly what I consider to be that far out of our whack here. So I'm not stressing about that too much. I'm just going to confirm that that approach was correct because it does not look right in my mind. ILS 5 by QT. Yep, that's right. Go back to the map. And now we got the fun part. So now we actually got to put this darn plane down on the ground here. So what I want to do now is I want to go ahead and contact the Providence and sort of let them know, like in Unicom, what my intentions are so people will know exactly kind of what we're trying to do. Providence. That was weird. I'm afraid to push the button again. Was it me talking? Oh, I see the issue. I'm on my own frequency. Ah, that's fun. Providence traffic, Piper 9725 Quebec is 15 miles to the west, bound on the ILS runway 5 by QT for runway 5 Providence. So that's basically everything they need to know. They know roughly where I am. They know what my intended approach is going to be. Usually what you want to do is throw on your altitude, but that's okay too. But like I said, I'm not stressing about that too much at this particular time. Let's see that a little bit. Okay, so now this approach is not fun. So what we're going to have to do is we're actually going to have to proceed, go to Providence, turn the airplane around, do this little kind of teardrop thing, and then fly down and land on the ground. One of the things I love, though, is it's already preloaded our frequencies up here so that we know that we can just bop over to them real quick when we do get a little bit closer to the ground. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and fast forward a tiny bit until we get just about established. All right, let's take a look at this approach. So basically what we have to do is, you can see we're kind of off to the west. Let's zoom out just a tiny bit so you can see. And just like we said, we're basically going to proceed right along here, get here, which is going to basically be coming down here, 2100 to QT, hit this point, go down, do a procedure turn, which is what this funky little barb thing looks like. Actually, I want to go up. I'll let it do it. Then we're going to flip around and basically make her all the way down through, which again, not going to be too hard, but the course reversal obviously is going to make things a little bit more fun for us. Now we'll make sure we show you the gory details once we get a little bit closer. This is true old school IFR flying. It's actually kind of fun because I don't get to do it very often. So things we need to know the localizer frequency, which not going to lie, I'm actually going to switch it right now so that we have it. There's another frequency we're going to need, which is 115.60. That's a PBD. That's the actual VOR station here. The reason we need to know this one is if we do have to go missed approach, it's basically going to give us a procedure for it. So let's see here. PBD, missed approach. Here we go. So if we have a missed approach, we proceed 321 to Fosti intersection, which is off on 111.0. Oi! So we need to make sure we get that one all pre-programmed as well. Nobody said this would be easy, but hey, you wouldn't be here if it was, right? Okay, so we'll go back. I'll make sure everything looks okay on this side. Looks pretty good. Unfortunately, I've lost my COM2 radar. So if I press this button, oh no, my radios. So obviously that makes things a little bit more exciting for us. But we'll deal with it. I'm not too stressing about it. Up. The entire flight, I've basically gone up, down, up, down. Okay, so QT we're supposed to be at, let's see, an altitude of 2,100 feet. So I'm taking a look at our little situation here. let's work it out. QC, again, remember, QC is the one that is... QC is right here. That's after we've already crossed the runway, so we have plenty of time to get there. So it takes us 3 miles to lose 1,000 feet in something this small, so we have to kind of keep that in the back of our head. So in order to successfully do this one, we're basically going to have to ring this corner right here. Start descending right when we get to this line here, and of course, once we cross this line, we're going to have to go ahead and give them a call. See you in a moment. All right, we're getting real close now. So I know I've got about 10 nautical miles away from QT. Remember, it takes about a mile to get rid of 3 miles to get rid of 1,000 feet. So what I'm going to go ahead and do is once this magical number hits 10, we'll go ahead and start descending. Remember, our target altitude is going to be 2,100 feet that we're going to be trying to cross here, which shouldn't be too much for us. All right, 10.5 to... All right, we'll go use our good instrument piloter skills here. Instead of grabbing the yoke, we'll just reduce our RPM to, well, let's call it about 2,200, maybe even 2,300. I think that might even be too much. So now what we're going to do is we're going to use the throttle to control our airspeed game, or not airspeed game, our vertical speed. I'm going to go ahead and give it just a little bit more throttle here, and we can see that our speed's going to start picking, or no, vertical speed's actually going to start coming down. Like I said, we need to hit about 2,100 feet when we get down to QT. Let's go ahead and pop up QT real fast. I'll grab that one. You can see we passed into Boston's little area there, but like I said, we called them, they didn't want us, so, oh well, it happens. So go ahead and take a look here. So we're basically going to be ripping along this particular position. Actually, need to give it just a little bit more RPM here, because it seems like we're starting to lose it pretty quick there. But again, the conditions, because of the way the weather is interpolated, have been anything but hospitable, which is welcome to the real world. So 2,100 feet, we're going to hit here. We're going to kind of go backwards, do our little crossing procedure turn here, and then we're going to come spinning around. Since there is nobody else up here with us that we need to worry about, other than that guy we heard a little while ago, which turned out to be us, we're going to go ahead and double check to make sure that when we hit this point, we're just kind of let everybody know where we are and kind of what we're doing. Oh, man, this thing is... we are getting bounced. This is not unusual in lightweight airplanes in situations like this. Other things I've done since we talked last is I went ahead and switched to the other fuel tank. We've been running on that other one for quite a while. Taking a look there, I can see that my right fuel tank has got quite a bit more combustibles than the one on the left side. But if you look even closer, you'll realize they're almost exactly the same. And that's just because, you know, a quirk of the way the thing was actually modeled here, which, that happens. All right, so we'll see you when we get to QT. All right, you can see now that we are just starting to overfly the field. There it is. Oh, that's got to be a fun landing for me. Oh, man, I don't know why I do this to myself so often. So you can see right now, altitude-wise, we're supposed to be hitting 2,100 when we get to QT. You can see now that we're definitely going to be at 2,100 before we get to QT. The reason this happened, of course, is because when we were traveling in here, there was a very significant tailwind that was kind of pushing us along. We should have taken that into account. That descended a little bit, actually, I'm sorry, headwind. So we should have taken that into account and actually descended a little bit later. But again, as long as we're at or above 2,100 when we cross QT, we don't have to worry about it too much. So today we're going to be doing everybody's least favorite maneuver, which is a course reversal maneuver. You also hear this called a procedure turn. This is a fancy little instrument term. Basically what's happening is we have to go a 180-degree turn safely within the confined airspace that we're currently operating in. So if I actually go pop over this, now you can see us, by the way, how we're cruising along there. You can see that we're basically going to cruise along the ILS in reverse, hit this point, which is just past QT, flip around in a teardrop shape, and then we're going to come right back around. Now, the cool thing is if I actually zoom out a little bit, you can see this shape when we actually come down there. It's this little dude right here. So what I will do is I will cruise along at my 2,100 feet, and when we get to the turn, we'll go do all the magic then. All right, we've just hit our procedure turn. So at Kent, basically, like I said, we got to do that funky teardrop shape, basically come all the way around from which we came, and then line ourselves back up with the runway that we just started deviating from. Now, when you're in a gigantic airliner and you're doing this maneuver, it is no fun. When you're a little airplane in this maneuver, it's really not that big of a deal. They're not that intimidating to do. You just got to practice them a million times. Now, let's go ahead and take a look at our approach here. So it looks like after QT, we do our course reversal, and we're going to go down to 2,100 feet. And then when we recross QT again, we're going to go ahead and drop ourselves down to 2,000 feet, which you can see marked right here where our final approach fix is going to be. So that's going to be pretty interesting. It's a good time to make sure everything's kind of ready to go. Now, of course, in the real world, there's no defined shape for the teardrop. It basically gives you a heading. You can sit there and kind of fits with it all you need to do, depending on what's going on here. I'm just going to bring my nose down just a tiny bit. Yes, I've been flying this one by hand the whole time, so other than, like I said, the little left-right autopilot giving us a huge hand here. And again, it reduces workload. It's not there designed to replace you, as I was saying. All right, let's kind of work this sucker out now. Whoa, don't you dare. Now, the fancy version of the 750 actually has the ability to put those approach plates that I showed you a minute ago directly on the screen, so you can literally kind of follow it along with your finger kind of a thing. I can also link this over to Flight Plan Go, which is the application I use on my phone, but for today, I think it's kind of clear for this. So here's what we're going to do. We're going to be taking our reversal, come over to Kent, and then we're basically going to come down and take a look at things when we get back to QT. All right, we're now finally on the approach for the airport here. So a couple things we got to do when we do this is, first of all, because we're using our GPS to kind of help guide us, it isn't the device for getting us down to the ground. We're actually going to be using a regular ILS for that. So if we pop over to our approach plate super duper fast, they go up to here. I can see that my ILS frequency right at the top is 109.30. And I also know that my initial course is going to be 47. And we also know, taking a look here, we need to be at 2,000 feet by the time we get down to QT. So I'm actually going to start coming down a little bit here so that we can get underneath the actual, basically the glide slope itself. So down to 2,000 we go. We'll go ahead and call it when we get a little bit closer. Let's zoom in a little bit. I really wish that Flight Simulator did a slightly better job about naming things. So it's like, I zoom out just a little bit, and it's like, where am I going? As far as what my next waypoint has to be. Obviously, one thing you can do is you can pop over here and hit your flight plan button. You can go all the way down, and you can see currently we're heading towards QT, which is, like I said, roughly going to be that final approach fix. That's going to be the spot where things start getting really interesting for us. So we're going to have to come and work our way down this one. Let's go back to the approach plate, kind of mentally work this out. So basically, we're going to hit 2,000. We're going to proceed down to FX, which is 3.6. Down to PVD 2.8, and obviously IPVD. Our minimums today, because we were ILS, 253 feet. That is not much. I'm not too worried about it because we were able to see the airport when we crossed over it a little earlier, which gives me a little tiny bit of hope that we'll be able to put this thing down to the ground. One thing we want to do, of course, before we hit the ground is that we want to go ahead and make sure we're attached to the correct device here. So I'm going to come over and shut off nav mode. The safest way to do this, you can pop the API off super fast. We're going to switch the CDI to nav, flip it back on, pop the APR button, and now we're in business once again. So basically what we've just done is we've switched to the ILS. So now you can see right here, this is our glide slope that we're going to need to follow ourselves on. I've already set the 47 degrees that we're going to need to follow all the way down to the ground. And our next call is basically being at QT. Now the trick to ILS approaches, whenever you're doing them in the real world, of course, is use the throttle, don't use the elevator. It's much easier going, trust me. Once you start messing with all the forces of flight, things just get serious and they get very real very fast. The reason I popped this button, by the way, is I have to make sure that I'm on VLOC. Otherwise, we will not be receiving ILS signals, which I can see very clearly here. And I'm also noticing we're getting it over on this side as well. We have our handy-dandy DME, which is we're 8.5 nautical miles away. We're doing about 98 knots. Obviously, we're getting a face full of wind right now, and things are a little unpleasant. So as far as the VATSIM things you got to worry about, again, like I said, we are communicated, but there's nobody in control right now. We actually went over here and I popped onto the VATSIM map. You can see my ridiculous amount of flying that it took all the way to get all the way down here so that we can safely put it down on the ground. Like I said, we're going to pop into Boston Approach again, but like I said, Boston Approach, they'd send you an angry message on a VPilot basically saying, contact me, if you were needed to be doing it. But like I said before, they kind of rejected us because we were a little too far away. But again, I'm not going to stress about that too much. Providence traffic, Piper 9725 Quebec is established on the localizer and glide slope for runway 5 and crossing QT at this time. So now we're going to go ahead and reduce power. Pull the power all the way, of course. We go into a crazy dive. Now we got a little high there. That's what happens when you communicate instead of aviating. Bring the power back up. And we're just going to kind of glide our way downward to try to intercept our little glide slope again. Like I said, we got a little bit high there. That's okay. Don't scud run. Scud running simply means diving super low and basically trying to get under everything and hoping that you can find the glide slope. All right. Let's go ahead and get this thing going down. We have to reacquire the glide slope before we can start playing the game. And we're about to get in just a second here. Pretty good angle. Not touching the elevator. I can see that we're starting to come back down to glide slope. Again, the trick here is use your throttle. So I'm about to pass it, so I'm just going to push the throttle back up. And watch what happens. So your glide slope's going away again. Too much. So you can back the throttle. We can give it a little tiny push downwards. When you do this, of course, you're going to decrease. You're going to increase your vertical speed downwards, I should say, or decrease your, whatever you want to look at it. And that's going to make things more difficult for you to control in a second. So let's go ahead and hold this for a second. You can see I'm just about back to the glide slope. getting a little bit right on target. The thing's starting to pick up real fast there. I'm going to give it about 50% power. I'm going to go pull the nose up just a little bit. Like I said, our approach is already busted here. In the real world, you'd never have to finagle the elevator this bad. And we're starting to get a little high. That looks pretty good right there. And this is the game we play. Basically, we're going to look out the runway and out the window, and we're going to hope that we can see the runway. One of the dangers here is, hey, I see the runway, and then find yourself in a situation where now you can't land on the runway that you see. Providence Approach, Piper 9725 Quebec is 4 nautical miles south established on ILS runway 5. So basically all we did is we just let everybody know where we are and what we're doing. I can see the runway pretty clearly now. We're still a little bit above glide slope, but that's okay. Let that nose keep coming down. Use the power. It's time to go ahead and get the plane nice and dirty. There we are, right back in glide slope. Power comes in. We'll go ahead and pull the nose of the airplane up. Now we're established on glide slope and on the localizer. Delightful. Go ahead and pop in 2 notches of flaps. Make sure everything's ready to go. Make sure we're on our fullest tank, which is our left one. I believe that weird windy noise that you're listening to right at this moment is actually our flaps being extra loud. Apparently they decided to make that one separately, but that's what I get. So I can see the runway. I'm going to go ahead and suspend everything right here, just in case. I'm going to disable the automatic pilot. I'm now in regular control of the aircraft. I can see it. Basically everything's visual from this particular point forward. Got a little bit of a crosswind kind of nailing us there, so we're going to kind of adjust for it nice and gently. Providence traffic, Piper 9725 Quebec is in a short final for runway 5, Providence. We're just letting them know real quick that, hey, we're starting to get really close, which is, you can kind of take a look at the window. It is very obvious that we are at this particular kind of moment. So I'm going to go ahead and line myself up. Like I said, if we're under full tower control at this point, they'd be the ones clearing us for each one of these steps. But in this case, it's just us kind of worrying about things and not have to worry about it too much. I can see the end of the runway. We are very high, according to our little localizer ILS action there. Actually, it's a glide slope, not localizer. Localizer's left-right. But we're going to be able to put ourselves on the ground, no problem here. I'm actually going to bring up those noisy flaps. When you do that in the real world, of course, the plane drops right out of the sky. Don't have to worry about that too much. We're in a simulator. And this actually still says we're tremendously high, but we are not tremendously high. Either that or the localizer points at something other than the end of the runway, which seems kind of sketchy if you ask me. All right, there's the big old number 5 there. We're going to use that as our target. All right, I'm going to play keep away with the ground here. Got a little bit of a downslope, as you can see pretty distinctively. Starts to get heavy on the nose, and we are down on the back of tires. We'll go ahead and hold the brakes. And we'll go ahead and taxi off. Now, the last call I usually do is basically letting people know that we've cleared the runway so that everybody can kind of take it from here as far as everything goes. I usually disconnect after getting off the runway, too. Providence traffic, Piper 9725 Quebec just landed and is clear of the runway. Providence. And that's it. So now what we have to do is normally what you do, if you do have a ground controller, which we'll quickly confirm that we do or do not. Looking here, zooming out a little bit, I don't see any ground controllers, so I'm not going to stress about that. We'd normally call them, they'd give us some kind of instructions, and we go right back from which we came. Hopefully this video is helpful and kind of gets you excited for this thing. It's a tremendously long video, but whenever you're doing anything with this, things kind of take a little bit longer than you're probably used to. Other than that, enjoy.